presentation of RANEPA. RANEPA President, Mr. Mao, is not here, but I believe he made a lot of effort in hosting wonderful forums here at RANEPA. Every day, when I turn on TV, RANEPA activities, Gaidarovский forum is showing on TV. So I believe RANEPA is truly world-class organization. In terms of number, I think RANEPA has the biggest number of students, employees. I believe Professor just told me RANEPA has nearly 200,000 students with 17,000 employees. It's incredible. Truly incredible number. And also I like to appreciate IPAM director, Professor, as well as my old friend, Professor Alexander Kochevra, Professor Kalina, and many faculty members of RANEPA, students, and ladies and gentlemen. I will talk about governance and public sector issues, and then perhaps we can have a Q&A session. I also just met Mr. Agor Kalabinsky, who is currently UN Committee Expert of Public Administration. I was also a member of this committee for 8 years in the past number of years, so I was very pleased to see him here. Nowadays, if you move around everywhere, one of the issues would be how to build up public trust. I think public trust is a big issue, and we hear this is in crisis. Not only in certain area, but I think this is sort of a global phenomenon. So we try to build up strong public trust. Every day, I think you can hear the popularity of your leaders in my country, US, and everywhere. So we need to build up, strong public trust. But building up public trust is sort of a billiard game. When you play billiard game, you cannot hit directly from this ball to last one. You must hit second ball first, and then the second ball hits eventually the third ball. So, in order to build the public sector trust, we must have strong public sector capacity first, in terms of civil service system, financial system, and many other important public sector systems. Yesterday, I delivered another presentation regarding civil service reform. In order to run the biggest country like Russia, you should have strong, competent civil service. So I think a number of organizations are trying to promote civil service reform in Russia. I think that's a good direction to go. And then we should have good characteristics of good governance in terms of legality, integrity, effectiveness, and many important public values. And if you can improve these values, then eventually, as byproduct of this improvement, you can see high degree of public trust. I'm not well aware of Russian politics, but according to the Moscow Times today, you expect another presidential election in maybe 3 years to come. But I guess Moscow Times said that there is no serious alternative. Perhaps President Putin may have strong popularity. But nevertheless, he's trying to improve public trust. So I think the building up the level of trust in government is a very serious issue in many countries. And another important issue in the public sector is governance. Everywhere you go, you hear the term governance. But in terms of definition, defining the concept of governance would be various depending upon scholars. Depending upon professors, instructors, they may define differently. But the core essence of the public governance would be the last one. Social interaction of multiple stakeholders. You know, in the past, you had very strong government. Under the notion of government, government has strong power, and other stakeholders might have less influence. But under the notion of a new, concept of governance, we have to think about multiple stakeholders in a more or less pluralistic society. Some degree of power balance among government, market sector, as well as civil society. So we have to think about some multiple stakeholders situation in somewhat pluralistic society. In this circumstance, interaction will be different. So we emphasize more interaction among stakeholders. I think that is key notion of governance. That's the big difference between government and governance. So in that regard, if you ask me to visualize the image of governance, how can we distinguish the term government and governance? I think this is an important theoretical issue as well as practical issue. In my view, government might look like very traditional two-wheeled bicycle. When you have strong leaders and the leader lead the country. But if you think about the governance concept, as I told you, interaction among multiple stakeholders. So that image looks like this one. Bicycle looks like octopus. I don't know you eat octopus, but I do love octopus. And this is real bicycle. I found this bicycle in Austria. Mozart's hometown is Salzburg, and I was traveling around Salzburg, and I found very interesting bicycle like this, and they call it octopus bike. So if you're sitting on this octopus bike, how can you move? No one can monopolize, no one can dictate. And first of all, in order to move on, you have to ask your friend, where do you want to go? This lady might go left side, gentleman, the other side. So if everyone has different preference, then you cannot move. So in order to move on, you discuss, persuasion, deliberation, and agree, then you can move. So this is exactly, core essence of governance. So I think we are living in the age of governance. No one can monopolize, no one can dictate. We discuss, we agree, then we move on. So that's the image of governance. So I call governance would be a journey of the octopus bike. Of course, it's more, costly in terms of reaching to agreement, more communication, etc. It is not simple and easy, but I guess we are moving to this direction at the moment. Of course, rule of law is important, not by rule by law. Rule of law is different by rule by law. So we can insert this concept widely in government, but I like to emphasize three important elements here: accountability, transparency, and participation. I think they are most important elements in governance discourse. First, accountable governance. The term accountability is not fixed. You and I use the same language, but interpretation might be different. So we have to always think about the concept is evolving. It is not fixed. It is evolving depending upon the development pace. So in the beginning, accountability means you can imagine in old days old days, Soviet Union period. Everything goes by rule, compliance with rules and regulations. That's basic, I guess. That's basic interpretation of accountability. And based on that, and you want to raise question to civil servants, and you expect their responsive answer. So another level of accountability would be answerability. Officials should be answerable to citizen demand, or answerability in more courteous way. If citizens ask a question, they should respond in more friendly way or courteous way, with a smile, eye-to-eye contact, etc. And then, if this level moving on further and further direction, then current emphasis would be more performance-based accountability. In governments, we emphasize compliance with rules and regulations. That's the basic. So we emphasize the term innocence. You must be innocent without violation of any laws and regulations. But innocence is not enough. You should comply with rules and regulations, but in addition to that, you must demonstrate high performance. You must do your job on time, perhaps maximize what you can do. So that would be performance-based accountability. So again, the concept of accountability is changing. So you can imagine 4 pillars of accountability. Responsibility, somebody have to have strong responsibility. Answerability, I just explained to you a few minutes ago. And also trustworthiness. We should have a strong public trust and reliability, and also feel obligation. You are obligated to accomplish your duties and mission. So officials should be mission-oriented. And this chart will be interesting. See accountability ladder. So if you see bottom, if someone, your boss or your supervisor asks you something, you say, oh, I cannot do this. If someone gives a lot of excuse, that's not a good, response. You can find someone saying many excuses. I can do this, I can do that, and many excuses. That's not a good idea. Also blame others. So in upper level, you can see accountable behavior. Take a position, create solution perhaps together, and implement solution and perhaps together. That would be, good accountable behavior. I think we have to emphasize this kind of accountable behavior. Another one is transparency. Financial transparency is very important. I think in Soviet era, let's take, I think taking Russian case would be dangerous for me. So let me take Chinese case, which would be a little bit safe for me. When I traveled to China in 90s, my friend in Beijing, they were very powerful government officials. So we had good food with a lot of drink. Not vodka in China, but they also have very strong liquor as well. So I didn't have any problem in public space, having good time with them. But when we travel to Beijing now, in public space, they don't drink. I also found that in Raneplan, in public space, you don't drink as well. So this is new phenomenon. So anyone taking important position in government, we should have financial transparency. Even for me, I took administrative position at university, in government as well. I also government official as well. I worked for the president, and I was secretary to the president in charge of public personnel policy. I promoted civil service reform. That's why I spoke yesterday on civil service reform. I do the business. In our university, every administrator use credit card. We cannot use cash anymore. Whatever I use this credit card, I have to report to the university financial office. How many people I had a dinner, what we discussed. So I have to report. So executive financial transparency is heavily implemented. So it is quite burdensome. Sometimes I complain, but I guess this is the way to go. It is the way to go. Another one is interesting issue, Freedom of Information Act. Many countries promulgated this law, and in Korea we have Public Information Disclosure Act in 1996. So under this law, every single citizen has right to ask the government to release a certain document. Of course, except security issues. Security issues and safety issues. Hello? Yes, of course, except, but in general, administration category, any document could be released based on citizens' request. Of course, in the beginning, it didn't work out. It was very symbolic. Nothing happened, but over the years, citizens delivered this case to the court. Court made this is constitutional issue, and they also encouraged the government to release based on this law. So now I think many documents could be released based on this information law. Now, anti-corruption issue. I think this is also a very hot topic in Russia and many other countries, including Japan and China, as well as other countries. In Korea, we promulgated the Public Service Ethics Law in 1981. Of course, having the law is just a small step. Of course, we didn't have successful case in the 80s, but over the years we tried to improve, gradually. So when I was government official in the Office of President, I experienced a very interesting case. Of course, when I became government official, I declared my wealth, how much money I have, what is the price of my apartment, what kind of real estate should I have. So everything I report. And then when I left my position from the office of government, and the ethics office, asked me to reply, and I found very interesting case. I report everything, but I didn't report my insurance. I thought insurance is not part of my asset. But according to financial mechanism, insurance is also part of asset, so they make sure everything is correct. So then I realized that this system is quite working well. So they check everything. So I learned and realized that this system is working fine. And then 2001, we promulgated anti-corruption law. Of course, established a strong anti-corruption agency. And also in 2008, we made this agency more bigger and more powerful organization, combining with other ombudsman agency and appeals commission together. So this organization now quite powerful in terms of anti-corruption. Now, for anti-corruption, if you ask a question, Professor Kim, how can we minimize or reduce corruption? My answer is very simple. Tools, methodology, approaches, they are all available. We all know them. There is no quick fix or bullet approach. My dear colleagues and friends, for anti-corruption, we know how to do it. So in other words, tools, methodologies, approaches are all available. United Nations, OECD, many international organizations studied, analyzed, and they recommended all kinds of lists how to reduce corruption. So the problem with corruption is not because of we don't know methodology or approaches. Instead, a lack of willingness or lack of initiative. So it's a very complicated issue. It is not a simple issue. So if you don't ask me how to reduce corruption, so I told you again, we know all kinds of methodologies. If you Google anti-corruption strategies, you can find a long list from UN, international organization, every important organization proposed good, wonderful recommendations. So methodology, all available. So having said that, how can we reduce? Well, we should have strong political will. Strong political will, particularly in Russian context. We need strong political will and strong exemplary leadership. Somebody in high level must demonstrate such leadership and then move on. Otherwise, it's quite difficult. In terms of a theoretical exercise, here we have professors and students. Not practical exercise. Practical exercise I already mentioned to you, but in terms of theoretical research exercise, I'll show you interesting equation here. Corruption equation equals to monopoly plus discretion minus accountability minus transparency minus ethics minus compensation. This is theoretical exercise. This is not a practical issue, but you can utilize this idea for research papers. In other words, organization has monopoly power, a lot of discretion, and it may lead to corruption. If agency has weak system in terms of accountability, transparency, ethics, and low salary, it also may lead to corruption. So that might be interesting research equation. Fight against corruption. Basically, we should have two dimensions, repression as well as prevention. Prevention is something in advance. So in terms of, we should have bureaucracy reform, wealth declaration. In Korea, every government official, not everyone, but middle manager and higher level official, they must report his or her wealth every year. And then grades, let's say about direct general and higher, their wealth information would be public information. Public information means that everyone can find out how much money I have, etc. So wealth declaration, transparency initiative, and whistleblower. If you are working in one agency, your friends are committing some corruption, you can blow whistle. And whistleblower should be protected. So if whistleblower is not protected, then no one can blow whistle. So it must be protected as well. And also repression. If someone committed, corruption, we should have a very severe penalty, etc. Now let's talk about different subject, participation. In old days, government has a lot of information. They monopolized almost everything, but now citizens are well informed, well educated. So we have to open up space for public citizens' participation. In the beginning, open up websites, sharing fact sheets, and then later on, we should invite public comments, survey, public meetings, using ICT technologies. So we can say, you heard this meeting through, internet, Twitter, and many others. Likewise, when government trying to do something, they should have a more consultation, electronically or in a traditional way. And so eventually, we should have more citizen participation. So in this chart, in the beginning, we cannot have any real, practice, but starting from symbolic tokenism, then we can open up more space for public participation, more information sharing, more consultation, deciding together, and eventually acting together, and so on. So in this process, the role of civil society, NGO would be critical. NGO could play as watchdog. There are two kinds of NGOs. One would be working dogs. We call working dogs, delivering social service, etc. But the other role would be, barking dogs, lousy barking dogs. I don't know in Russia, but in Korea we have very noisy barking dogs. They are really, serious watchdogs. Innovation should be endless, open-ended, and we have to have change, transformation, and using ICT. So now anywhere, anytime, any device, we can deliver public service. Yesterday, gentlemen from Finland, they developed wonderful electronic taxation. 70% of citizens do not use any paper, etc. So everything, is done by electronic mechanism. In doing so, in Korea, we try to deliver public administration in a very speedy way. So I don't know how many of you heard about this Korean term, 빨리빨리. Any of you heard about the term 빨리빨리? Alexander, how do you say Korea quick in Russian?
Once again?
Do, quickly. As quickly.
Наверное, можно перевести это как «давай быстрее, быстрее, как можно быстрее». Вот так.
Yeah. The characteristics of Korean public administration would be 빨리빨리 administration, which means that very speedy delivery. If someone asks something, official must reply immediately. Immediately, as quickly as possible. And yesterday, I'm staying at the hotel, Crown Plaza Hotel, World Trade Center. It should be, World Trade Center means very international place. So I went to the bank to, exchange my dollar to Russian currency. And the gentleman working in small bank, and then he was doing something, and I said, I need to exchange. He didn't look at me. Just keep doing what he's doing, and said, come back in 10 minutes. Yeah, that's a good experience, interesting experience. I think in service organization, in any service organization, some customers are coming, we must look eye-to-eye contact. Look, this is courteous way. We look each other. And then, saying, how can I help you, right? With a big smile, if possible. So we like to have some courteous, friendly service. And then today, this afternoon at 3 o'clock, you have another interesting session, happiness. How can we make all Russians to be happy? This is very interesting panel. But I guess in the public sector, we try to deliver public service in courteous way, friendly way, and public service should be reasonable. So I like to emphasize reasonableness. Is this person reasonable? That's very important public value. Oh, this guy is not reasonable. This agency is not reasonable. That's no good. I think reasonableness is very important public value. I hope all of us in this room to be reasonable person. And another thing is, call center. In Seoul, we have call center 120. So if you travel to Seoul, if you don't know what to do in terms of public service, you can dial 120. This service is available in 24 hours and 365 days. So 2 a.m., if you cannot sleep, call 120 and talk to them I have some entry visa problem, so where should I go? They will answer to you immediately. And this service is available in not only Korean, English, Japanese, Chinese. Perhaps if we have more Russian, we could develop in Russian, language too. And also in terms of document, everyday life, we need some, simple document. Your residence record. Suppose I go back to Seoul, and then my school said, "Oh, Professor Kim, you went out, so we gave you some assistance. So you have to demonstrate your travel record." I don't need to go to any government agency. From my own computer at home, connect to this website and then put my ID properly, etc., with some security device, and then I can print my travel document immediately using my own printer. So now that, in addition to that, your construction documents and your service, taxation, and many others, you can print out immediately using your own computer in office or at home. So we try to promote our government's innovation, public sector, in terms of Government 3.0. Government 3.0 is based on Government 1.0, 2.0. 1.0 means government centered. In other words, in old days, government, orders everything. So that's a very old paradigm. And then next paradigm would be citizen paradigm, citizen-centered. But citizen is very diverse, from child, young generation to old generation. Citizen would be different. As you see here, citizen is not single group. Young kids and growing up, and each level you may have different demand, different service. So government should be able to provide individual citizen-oriented service. That's what we call Government 3.0. So government should create and develop more individual citizen-based need, etc. So we're trying to build up government service based on this kind of paradigm. Now, the evolution of governance. Governance is changing, and someone yesterday mentioned that high-level official said that you may send some government official to Singapore. That's good. Singapore is very advanced society. In terms of economic freedom, Singapore is almost number one. In Singapore, you can do anything in terms of economics. But in politics, Singapore is not a free country. Singaporeans, they cannot criticize or blame publicly. If they do, they're in trouble. In other words, Singapore has good governance, but Singapore doesn't have democratic good governance. So countries moving, to different directions. So in the beginning, in old days, we may have some clan governance based on your bloodline. Your father was king, son can be king, etc. So just clan governance. And then we adopted, all the traditional public bureaucracy, which is very hierarchical governance. Then, developing countries, they cannot have good governance, but they can have, very important basic, values. So what we call good enough governance. And then we can install good governance, which I explained to you a few minutes ago. Then eventually, we need to build up democratic good governance. So we have a substantial way to go. And another thing, I liked this issue very importantly. As Alexander, my friend Alexander explained to you, I traveled almost all the regions, Africa, Latin America, almost every country in Asia, Europe of course, but I didn't have a good opportunity to visit one of the most important agencies like RANХiGS. So I'm so excited to be. The reason I'm saying every country trying to promote nationalization, internationalization, and globalization. But I don't know how you define yourself, European or Asian, I don't know. But I am Asian. There's no other description for me, I'm Asian. But in Asia, we didn't have serious regional integration, regional exchange. So if you see this picture, Russia could be part of Europe, also part of Asia. So I think this geography is very important for all of us. Since we are located in quite similar area in many Asian countries, although you are located a little bit, northern, territory, but more or less we are very much neighboring countries. So I think we should have more interaction among us. Yesterday, people talk about Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Within this, framework, they want to promote more exchange. That's good. But not only Shanghai Cooperation Organization, much more broadly, between Russia and other Asian countries. I'd like to see more exchange. Yesterday, in my lecture, after my lecture, one senior professor raised questions. Mr. Kim, in Korea, you have a textbook in English. I guess he has, all the memory. He doesn't understand what's going on in other countries. He has all the memory. And Korea was poor, maybe never been there. So he's asking me a question. In your country, English textbook is available. I was very shocked anyway. Korea has, in terms of proportion, the largest number of public administration programs in whole Asia. In whole Asia, including Russia. In other words, every university has public administration program from bachelor to graduate level. So that means that if we don't know each other, we cannot have such productive dialogue. So I guess we should have more interaction among Asian countries. So that's why I emphasize regionalization. Of course, Eurasia Union is important in Russian context. So you can promote continuously Eurasian Union, but at the same time, Russia is a big nation in this situation as well. I hope Russia could promote more regional integration. So my dream is taking a train, leaving a train from South Korea, moving to North Korea, Vladivostok, Khabarovsk, and then moving to Novosibirsk or elsewhere, coming to Moscow and going to St. Petersburg. This could be my dream. One day I want to take a train from Korea and going to northeast and then eventually coming to Moscow or St. Petersburg. This could be doable dream. So in that regard, our country's president already proposed to President Putin to materialize this cultural festival activities to promote this idea. So many young college students may come to small city in Russia in order to promote this idea. So please come to South Korea. We have direct flights between Seoul and Vladivostok. Moscow is also very close. We have no requirement for entry visa, free visa, entry visa, no paperwork. Just by airplane ticket, you can come to South Korea. Very easy. No any question at custom desk. Now, let me have a couple more slides and then I will finish my talk. In terms of public sector reform, we should have some paradigm shift. from industrial era to information age. We had authoritarian regime in Korea, but now we have much more flexible leadership. So we should have hierarchical to more flat, rule-based system to more flexible system. In old days we had a much more standardized system, but now we have to have quality-oriented, command and control to empowerment and delegation. We should have many choices. Public service should have more choices and more paper lists or ICT-based service delivery. And also we should be more adaptive. We should continuously adapt other new development, etc. So I think we should have a continuous public sector reform. I think sharing a sense of urgency. I was so interesting to see, gas station price. Currently, I'm staying in Washington D.C. 1 gallon costs $3. But here, gas price is very reasonable, very reasonable, very reasonable. But I guess every country is facing serious economic challenges. So I think we should have a sense of urgency, and Russia needs to promote further economic development and socio-economic development and so on. So I think we should share a sense of urgency. And then mobilize commitment through some diagnostic negotiation, then develop a shared vision and deliver this idea publicly, and then generate shock wins and so on and so forth. So I think we should have a successful reform plan. I'm sure your government has a plan, and I think we have to move on as serious as possible. So this is my brief presentation to you. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, and we can have an interesting interaction now. Thank you very much for your attention.